And finally, let me come to this subject of climate change, which the press and the Prime Minister touted so much. And again, if I have a word to describe the PAP's approach, you know what that word would be? Fiasco. Fiasco. The Prime Minister told us at the National Day rally that Singapore has done its part, and he was very proud that we are a signatory to the Paris Agreement. We have imposed a carbon tax, and there was one other factor that he mentioned. Really? That is the best you can do? And of course, he told Singaporeans that we may have to spend up to $100 billion in the next 50 to 100 years in order to protect ourselves from rising sea levels and other consequences. Really? Is that the best you can do? My friends, climate change is something all of us have to be responsible for. We all have a stake in preserving the survivability of this earth. It is a subject that our young people, our children, are passionate about because they learn a lot about it in school. And this is their century. They are the ones who are going to be greatly affected by climate change. But where are our electric cars, our electric buses? The Prime Minister said that the government sent a study team to the Netherlands to learn from them on how they protected the country from rising sea level and from flooding. All of us know that a large part of the Netherlands is below sea level. Now, they would have noticed, once they stepped out of Schiphol Airport, that all the taxis are electric taxis. But maybe they didn't take a taxi. Maybe they were given official cars to ride in. And that is the reason why they don't mention the electric taxis. And Elon Musk, the most brilliant innovator of electric cars, has expressed his utter disappointment with the Singapore government. And he said that he did not feel that the Singapore government was accepting of electric cars, was not welcoming of electric cars. And that is why in Tesla's Model 3, which is a model that they are exporting to many countries like Australia, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, they bypass Singapore. So Singapore is now getting one of the best electric cars in the world because we have a government, despite what they tell you, that is welded to big oil, to the interest of big oil. They may tell you the things they hope to achieve for climate change, but don't believe them, because for a simple thing like electric cars, they are not welcoming of it. Do you know that in Britain, they set up a committee to look into ways of how by 2050, Britain can be a net zero greenhouse gas emission country. And that committee has recommended that by 2035, all new cars and vans that find its way into the country must be electric. And they want to bring that target to an even earlier date, 2030. And in Britain today, 33% of all increased electricity needs, power needs, are met by renewable energy, solar and wind primarily. In Singapore, we are a country that is barely 100 kilometers away from the equator. Solar should be a big factor in our power generation. And yet, are there laws to make it mandatory for all our HDB, our condominiums, our houses to have solar panels? You don't see it. We are welded to big oil. Heng Swee Keat imposes carbon tax. He is the finance minister who is the most ingenious at finding new ways to tax Singaporeans. But we all know, carbon tax is not necessarily going to make a country more carbon friendly. Look at the COE they imposed on Singaporeans 30 years ago. Has it made our roads less congested? Recently, I took a taxi from where the SLE begins, off Upper Thomson Road. And I took that taxi all the way to the state courts during peak hours. I paid a fare of $36, and out of that $36, $10.50 went to ERP. And I can tell you, that trip took me 45 minutes, which is at least a good 15 minutes more than what it would have taken me a few years ago. So the ERP is a good example of how taxation has not solved a problem. Taxation is government's way of earning more revenue from citizens. And isn't that what Heng Swee Keat told us in the budget of 2017 the PAP had to do? In order to raise more revenue, it had to find new ways to tax citizens. You know, one other thing the PAP could have done if they were really serious about reducing our carbon footprint? One of the biggest sources of carbon emission is from the aeroplane. And you know what they did? They went to make Seletar Airport into a hub for the private jets, which is a killer for carbon emissions. If they were serious, they would not have done that. In fact, we can be such a driver in this field. We could have banned private jets, and the Prime Minister could have set a brilliant example by traveling only commercial. But what did he do a few years ago? He went on a trip in a private jet, which I believe was owned by one of the subsidiaries of Singapore Technologies, a Temasek subsidiary. So, my friends, the Singapore government may impose tax on citizens. It may want to spend $100 billion protecting our island from a rising sea level, but that does not mean that this government is climate friendly, because it is welded to big oil, and everything it does is against what our children is being taught in schools about preserving the survivability of this earth. Now, my fellow Singaporeans, we are only a few months away from a general election. And this will be the most climatic election we have had in 60 years. This election will decide whether our young generation will have a better future or a lesser future than their parents. This PAP bunch are not the people who, in Lee Kuan Yew's words, have the helicopter view. They are not creative, they are not innovative, they are not enterprising, they are followers. They are always behind the curve. It is the opposition who now have the people with the drive and the creative ideas to bring Singapore forward. The PAP have enlarged the role of the state and diminished the role of the individual. They have crippled the enterprise and the effort of that individual Singaporean on which a prosperous nation depends. And I hope that in the coming election, Singaporeans will realize that fact and vote in a better government that will ensure the future of our next generation and our country. Thank you.